Hey, everybody, it's David Rains, host of All Access Chat, and super happy to have you here. We're bringing you our latest episode today. You're not going to want to miss this one. This is an All Access Chat behind the scenes in a way you've never seen before. And if you like what you see here, make sure you hit your subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications, because we got lots more content coming your way, and you don't want to miss out on a single episode. If you like what you see as well, share it with your friend, because I'm sure you have friends who would be interested in seeing the content that you enjoy as well. Don't forget as well, in the link to the video, there is all kinds of links to our guest social media accounts. So you're not going to want to miss that, and you're going to want to follow them as they'll be happy to have you, as we are. Thanks very much. Now let's get right to the episode. We are pleased to be joined by someone who I consider to be rock royalty here in Canada. Him and his band Econoline Crush have been a big favorite of mine and friends of the show for a long time. Welcoming to the show this afternoon, Mr. Trevor Hurst, lead singer of Econoline Crush. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
How have you been since the pandemic started?
Yeah, this pandemic is quite something. Hey, you have a lot of people that don't really want to buy into it or whatever the deal is, and it's gotten so serious. I have kids and I have a son that is immunocompromised. So for me, it's pretty heavy. Like, this is a big deal, this stuff. And so, yeah, it's been pretty overwhelming. Like, I stay home with my wife is a nurse, and her job is a bit more specialized than what I was doing. So she's working and I'm watching the family for the pandemic, I guess, basically.
Awesome. Well, please pass on our thanks to her as well, because that's not an easy job, I'm sure, at this time to be doing that either. Regardless of the vein of healthcare you're working in, it's certainly a risk all around. I want to kind of go back a little bit, talk a little bit about the band, talk a little bit about what's been going on. So why don't we go back? 1992, band gets signed after 26 shows. What's that like? Take us through that process a little bit and tell us about how that all came about.
Well, what's interesting is when you're first starting in your career, it's almost like there's sort of a willful disbelief, like a suspension of disbelief. You just battle on like, well, of course we're going to get signed, and of course we're going to get a record deal, And so pretty confident early on that we could do this, and we had a lot of success, because I think just where everybody that was in Econoline Crush had been in a band before and had some level of success. The whole thing started with I think it's called The Stranger, this weekly rag kind of entertainment paper in Seattle. I was down there living with management at the time, had this management deal with Kim and Diana Harris at Harris Music Group, have Easy Street Records down in Seattle, and they also managed a band called Queensryche. They kind of like looking out for my career, and I saw an ad in The Stranger, and it was for a guy to sing over top of some keyboards and stuff. And so I went back up to Vancouver, met with the guy that posted the ad, and it was Tom Ferris. And Tom Ferris had been in a band called Mauve, and Mauve was the reason that Network Records was started in Vancouver. A lot of people think it was because of Skinny Puppy, but it was actually Mauve that started that label. And so we got together and started working the band. I had another kind of side thing that I was doing with the band, of guys that was kind of doing an alternative thing. I brought them into the party. We got it going. We were demoing a bunch of songs, and even before we named the band, because of Tom's history, we had some interest out of New York, and the band actually got named on the day that we sent a demo to New York for the label, one of these labels, to listen to. So it was kind of weird. Like, the guy's sitting at the door, the courier, FedEx guy, and we're writing on the CD package, the names of the songs. And then they're like, what are we going to name the band? The guy's like, dudes, come on, I got to get going, And we're all sitting there like, and Tom goes, Crush? And I was like, oh man, like, there's gonna be so many bands called Crush. Like, we got to think of something else. And I was like, what about some kind of machinery thing, like Cadillac Black, or I don't know, like just something like. And people were throwing out names. And then there was silence. And I said, when I was a kid, I would always take my buddies and we'd listen to the music in my dad's Econoline van. And somebody said Econoline Crush, and I was the one with the Sharpie, so I just wrote it down and I said, look, we can always change it.
And here we are all these years later.
Right?
That's great.
But here's the kicker. When I told that, so we get a deal with BMI, blah, blah, blah. Years later, we end up getting signed to Restless in America. So they said, how'd you get the name? And I tell them that exact story that I just told you. And they look at me and they go, yeah, no. And they made up this crazy tale. I'm not even kidding. This crazy tale about like a French novelist who wrote about the optimistic spirit of humanity or something. And then everybody would take an Econoline Crush, which was a drug, and it would make them optimist or something. And that was like, he made this whole thing up, and and for years I had to go with this thing in the States. I was like, yeah, I read this novel. Oh my gosh, it was crazy.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. So you've toured with some pretty incredible bands over the years, Foo Fighters, Green Day, Kiss a couple of times. Have you got a favorite band that you've toured with?
I mean, between Kiss and Alice Cooper, the classic guys, it's just to watch those. It's not even just the band, it's the organization. To watch those organizations in action, old school rock. I mean, tight bands, tight crew, management's good. Everything is just, it's impressive. And Kiss was so much fun because of the fanaticism of the audience. Like, obviously they're not that into you, so it's a huge challenge to open for Kiss, because most audiences just want you to be done, And like, I can remember leaving the Calgary show. Just before we went on, I was running out CJ, or one of the stations had a van out front, and I had my stage gear on, and I was running out front to get into the van to do a little, interview before going out on stage. And so I'm going by, and the audience is going in, and some lady yells at me. She goes, "Hey, buddy, U2 was last week." Commenting on my attire or something. And I remember just thinking, man, this is like, there's no audience like the Kiss audience, just
crowd,
lippy, and it's so funny.
Have you got a favorite tour?
And it's Rob, our guitar player's birthday, and he is a Ace Frehley fan. So he has spoken with Ace Frehley's girlfriend about getting his guitar signed after the show. So we think, well, okay, that cool. We can hook that up. They can hook that up. So we're standing we're in Cleveland. We have 2 days off afterwards. We're kind of like zoning out, just standing at the blue line, kind of looking at the stage. And I'm with Cleveland has a newspaper there called The Plain Dealer. I love that name. Yeah. So the music critic is I kid you not, an 85-year-old grandma. She has a sandwich in her purse. So we're standing there. So there's the music critic, myself, and then Rob, and we're looking up at the stage, and they start into the final song, and a lady leans over to me and she goes, "Is this Black Diamond?" And I'm like, "Yes, I believe so. Yes, this is Black Diamond." And Ace's wife, girlfriend, whatever, she comes up, she falls into me and Rob, and kind of smashes into us kind of a little bit on boards. We help her up, and because we have a day off, I was kind of speaking with Bob Marley's ghost, let's just say. So I'm a little bit just happy to be there. And I look at the stage, and Gene's looking at me, and he's playing his bass, and he looks right at me, and he's like, "What was that?" He says. He says that, like, mouths that at me. And I turn to Rob, and I'm like, "Man, this must be really good," because, like, I just thought that Gene just said, "What was that?" to me off the stage. And he's like, "What?" And I go, "I know, right?" Like, he looked right at me and said, "What was that?" And then again, he's making really solid eye contact with me as I'm standing on the boards. And I'm like, whoa, this is really strange. So all of a sudden, it's like, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, boom, boom, boom. And there's confetti cannons go off. The show's ended. Stuff's falling from the sky. I'm like standing there like, ah, looking at all this stuff coming down, right? And then Tom Thayer is right in front of me. He's like, "You with me now." And I'm like, "What?" Right? So I get pulled backstage. I'm standing there. There's Tom and Gene. Gene's standing there. Tom's standing there backstage. At stage left is everybody else. Paul, Peter, Chris, Ace, the crew, the hangers-on. There's probably 30 people backed up being held by security. And there's this, the whole space of the stage, me, Gene, and Tom. Gene goes, "Hello, Trevor. how are you today? I go, good, Gene, good. So I wanted to ask you, Trevor, was that woman bothering you? And I'm like, who, Gene? And he looks at me and he goes, Trevor, was that woman bothering you? And I'm like, well, no, I mean, they're just trying to hook up the sign in of the thing. And, she kind of, they're just, it's Rob's birthday here. No big deal, Gene. It's all good. Trevor, I need you to know that she's in no way part of the KISS band, the KISS organization, management, or anything at all. So I ask you one more time, Trevor, was that woman bothering you? And just as he says this, right, this drop of like that fake blood stuff falls from his chin, and I'm watching it as it goes all the way down and hits the floor, the concrete by his big boots with the teeth, and I look back up at Jean and all this blood and everything, and I'm just like, you know what, Jean, she kind of is. I mean, they're hiding booze in our dressing room, and she's a bit weird, and I just, we just wanted to get his guitar signed, but she just keeps getting hammered and falling into us, and he goes, and he looks over at Tom, he looks back at me, and he goes, and then Rob, who's since joined the conversation, kind of gives me a kidney shot because he's like thinking now he's never going to get his guitar signed. And and I'm like, and he's like, thank you for your candor. And then he just like flips his hand and all the people go rushing by. And so then this woman disappears, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, she's in the desert somewhere.
Yeah.
But on the last day of the tour, she showed up again. But I'm telling you, man, that moment there when that drop fell, and I had to confess. He had me. There's nothing I could do.
Scared you to death.
He did. I mean, like, how tall he is in those outfits? He's like 7 feet tall. You're like, what? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
What is this about? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I know.
That's a great story. That is a great story. So you guys have been nominated a few times for some pretty big awards, but of course the biggest one being the Juno nominations. Can you tell us about the time that you found out about the first Juno nomination that you ever got, and what was that like for you guys?
Well, like, the strangest thing is when you get the nomination, well, they didn't tell us that they were going to, I don't know how it works, if they put your name in, whatever. So it was shocking. And then I don't think you really know the levity, like how big a deal it is until you actually go to the Junos. I think the best part, though, was when we got nominated, the Junos, I think that year were in Hamilton. So we had to come out from Toronto to Hamilton. So you ride out in a limousine or whatever, a limousine. And I remember we pulled up and there's all these photographers and everybody's like, ah! We get out of the car, silence. Like nobody knew who we were.
Who were these guys?
So it was like the funniest thing is like just screaming and pandemonium, and then we get out and we just killed it. It was awesome. I mean, like the whole thing, like, right, there's a more, when you get nominated, that allows you to be part of the party, I guess. And so it was really fantastic. I mean, I remember I bowled with Buffy St. Marie, just hanging out with all these legends. It was amazing. And just talking with different artists and going and watching different people perform, and amazing. It really is cool.
Hey, the devil went gold and platinum, and when you do those, when you hit those big milestones, you get some pretty cool hardware that you usually get to hang up on a wall somewhere.
Yeah.
Where are yours hanging?
They're on the floor. Under 2 keyboards, actually. I could see them. I don't know, like that stuff to me, I never put it. One time it served me well where I had it hanging somewhere. And the police came in, and then they saw that on the wall, and then they were like, that's a long story, we're not going to go there, but it helped there. But in a lot of situations, I don't know, it's that, to me, those sales things and stuff like that's, it's not that big a deal to me. I know that people dig it, they look great. Yeah. But I never had them. I've never really put them anywhere.
One of my favorite songs, All That You Are ×3, almost got me arrested. And
really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had it cranked up on my stereo one summer day. I was cruising down the road and I had it so loud, and I didn't hear the police car lights and siren behind me. And,
oh no!
And apparently it was a few blocks before I realized. And of course, when I finally got stopped, he wasn't very happy. And he asked me, what my problem was, and I said, "Did you hear that song? Like, come on, that's the greatest song ever." And, so I got to know how that song came to be.
Well, that song. So we were the material together for The Devil, and we had pretty much everything. And Ziggy had just, had joined the band. He was the latest guy to kind of join. And so he had some extra stuff. And he hands me this song called Girls, Girls, Girls. And I was like, isn't that like a Motley Crue song? And he goes, no, this is my Girls, 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 not theirs. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I go, wow, this is crazy. I don't know, Zig, but I like this music. Can I get it without you singing Girls, Girls, Girls every 5 seconds? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so I took that music and wrote All That You Are to it. And it was pretty interesting. Like that song, some songs, you'll live with them for months and months and months, right? Like Home is a good example where I had ideas, Sparkle and Shine too, but couldn't nail it, couldn't finish it some reason. But All You Are just basically was like, oh, just whipped it down. And like, it's funny because the signs, the line in there that almost everybody always quotes is, I'm a liar, believe me, baby. It was so easy to write it, and you wish you could come up with 20 of those, but it just sort of fell out of nowhere.
Awesome.
And yeah, that song was a quick write. It really was. And then in the studio, it didn't sound exactly as it did initially, and Ziggy and Sylvia and myself finishing up the vocals, and he was the one that Ziggy and Sylvia were sitting there, and they were the ones that kind of figured out the answer, call and answer sort of in the chorus where there's that extra line because it wasn't there. And when we added that, it was like, oh my gosh, this is sounding really good,
So when you record a song like that, or is there a time where you listen back to your, you got your album done and you're ready to go, and that there's that one or two songs that are just that special kind of, this is the one kind of song?
I don't know. Like I did it's interesting with the only time I think I've ever had that moment was with You Don't Know What It's Like, when we finished recording with Bob and it was mixed. It was really obvious to me then. Like in The Devil You Know, I didn't know I knew that we had, like, I loved Sparkle, I loved Home, I loved All You Are, I loved Ray, I loved almost all the songs on that record. So it wasn't, I didn't know what was going to fly on that one and didn't really care. I just liked it. When we did You Don't Know What It's Like, it felt like I had talked with EMI about the song and they didn't hear it. EMI Canada, they didn't get it. And so I flew to the States and met with the guys that were running Restless Records, the label that we were on then. And I said, I think there's something here, man. And I can't get any love in Canada and I want to get this recorded. And at the time, they were doing a movie called Heavy Metal 2, FAKK, and it was the animated movie, heavy metal movie. And so we used that as the budget, like the soundtrack for that. And that's how we recorded it. And we flew over and recorded it with Bob. But they were the ones, Restless Records were the ones that believed. It was done. It sounded great. Like it had that sound and you just could feel the energy, right?
You knew, yeah. Switching gears a little bit. I mean, many artists are finding it a little bit weird with all this extra time since the pandemic started. Normally being out on the road and kind of that nonstop go. How's it been for you having that extra time with your family and giving you maybe some extra time that you would not normally have?
I think it changes your value system in a little bit because, like, before you were going and going and going and you took a lot of things for granted, like the fact that we could meet in groups, do these things, all this stuff. And now, you realize that, this may never be the same as it was again. So that changes it. And I think also just our just time with the kids, time with the art even too, like just being able to have a bit more time to work on things because you're not really in that rush to go to some other function or some other activity. You can't, especially right now. We've been locked down here for almost a month in Manitoba with the code red. And so we can't go anywhere, do anything really. I haven't really gone anywhere in a long time. So you spend all your time working on music or like working on different projects, writing, I'm trying to write a couple articles as well. So there's things that we're doing now that probably we would never do or have time to do if we were touring.
So you've got one of the things that you've been working on is the new single, Fight Like the Devil.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that song and how that came to be.
I have my youngest is just about to turn 2 in the spring, and she would be teething in the summer, and all this stuff was going on with protests in the States and in Canada and around the world, with George Floyd and everything. And I would be walking late at night because Margaret wouldn't sleep. And so I'd take her out in the stroller just, in the summer, cool evening breeze. And we'd go for these long walks and I'd be cutting through the university and there's tall buildings in there. And I just thought, man, I think in my head, like just different things, you're thinking, what would it be like to be in one of those protests, or to have one of your friends or family members in those protests and have the police turn on them and being kind of corralled in, because in the university, the buildings are close, and I just could imagine it. I could almost feel the fear. And so I came back and I wrote the lyrics to Fight Like the Devil. And it's entirely just based on that premise of just, gee, like what? Because to me, when you watch some of these things, you're like, how does that even happen? Like, how does that even happen? And so it seems to me that any rational person might want to go down and protest that. And then any rational person might, or persons might be, you meet somebody, you're like, wow, you're nice. This is cool. Nice. Same like-minded people talking. You lose track of time. And then all of a sudden, it's like the police are there. I could see people that didn't mean to get caught up in it, getting caught up in it, and maybe getting hurt. And so I just wanted that to kind of lock that in the song. And it's really rare, too, for me as a lyricist to kind of set out with a mission. Usually I just let the song dictate, but this was one where I kind of caught sort of a bit of a wave, and I just wanted to write it about that. And awesome. Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important that people realize, we're all one. We're all just one.
Yeah, and I was gonna kind of lead into the next question about, what do you, as an artist, do you feel there's a responsibility, to use your voice, I guess, to highlight these kind of things?
Yeah, well, it's weird because you have the duality. You have people that will tell you, look, you're supposed to distract. You're not supposed to have an opinion. You're going to alienate some of your audience. You're going to alienate this if you have an opinion about. Stay away from politics. Stay away from all these different topics. It's like, well, we're human beings and we interact with other human beings. We make art because we feel compelled to, but we also make art because I at least feel it's our job as an artist to hold up a mirror to society and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. Do you see the same things? I think there is a responsibility. I think that great change has always come because artists spoke out, or because activists and artists joined forces. So I think it is important. I think, it's probably smarter to be more embracing the unity factor rather than the divisiveness, but other bands do that as well. Whatever, I guess, is your thing. I don't think that I'm that, like, people, within even the organization, within the label, have had debates about this. And the thing is that I don't think I'm being politically active. I think I'm being humanitarian. I'm just saying, look, I think that doesn't matter what you look like. Race is a social construct. This isn't something that, we should be so focused on when we have, like, bigger things to take on, like a pandemic, that we should not be fighting amongst ourselves based on some made up theory that there's these different races. We're all human beings, we all bleed red.
It's a great message for sure. So how do you think the music industry and the world in general is going to be transformed, I think, as we come out of this pandemic? Do you think there's going to be a big difference, or are we going to kind of slide back into business as usual?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't think business as usual is ever going to be back. I think it's going to be different. I think you're going to see, I don't know. You know what? The other thing I think, like, I forget what, during the plague, Shakespeare wrote a play. I think you're going to see a ton of art because people have been at home. And then the themes that come out of that art, I can't imagine it not being about humanity and about connectiveness because of the isolation that it was born out of. I think you're going to see a lot of art. I think you're going to see a lot of new movies, maybe plays. I don't know. More importantly, I think you're going to see, when we do return to concerts, there will be, I think, an awareness of that transmissibility of whether it's COVID or just anything. I think you're going to see that people are going to be a lot more careful than we were in the past, definitely. And I don't think it will be initially business as usual. Like, I think that people will probably have some trepidation about going to the shows, be a little bit worried that they might catch something. And then some people aren't going to give a crap. But I wouldn't be surprised if most shows, you're going to see a chunk of the audience for quite some time wearing masks, unfortunately, or fortunately, just because that's going to be we just don't know where we're at with this thing, and we don't fully understand it, really.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense on that as well. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. Certainly, as a lover of live shows, I can't wait for them to come back. But I think you're right. I think there's going to be a level of cautiousness around those shows, and it'll be interesting to see what venues do and how people react. It's going to be a new world, I think, when we emerge from this whole thing at some point. Finally, I guess my final question for you: what do you have to say to the Econoline Crush fans who are waiting for this new album that you're working on? What can we expect?
Well, I'm really excited because we when this pandemic started, we had this plan. The pandemic kind of knocked us off our game, but what it did to, I guess, it changed I don't know how to put this in words. We have now kind of had the time, the luxury, or whatever it is, to put together what I think is a really good team of people to finish this record and to sort of, I don't like the word regain, but it's just like we're going to get back to where it was that we wanted to be before with our music, which is innovative, new, exciting, passionate. It's going to have all the elements that we have been fighting so hard to put into our music for our entire career. We feel like as a band, and I feel like as a singer and songwriter, that we're at the spot where we're getting like everything to line up, which is a really good feeling, because there's lots of times you're in the studio, you have doing different things, you have some ideas, some not, it's flushing it out, things, sometimes it just, not everything gets done. Whereas now with this pandemic, with this time that we had some false starts, some lurches, some bumps, and all these things happen, but it appears that they've happened, that saying, but they've happened for a reason, because now we've sort of put ourselves in a situation where I feel like we've got a great team. I feel like we've got a great batch of songs. And I think we have a view of what's ahead and what we want to achieve. And we see that on the horizon, and we're able to kind of work towards it. And it's one of the few times, I think, in our career where we've had all of those things sort of come together and we're certain sort of our path. And now that I've said that, something weird will happen and change it all.
And that path is totally changed. Yeah. Sounds great. When your shows are back up and running, where's the first place you want to play? Do you have a preference as to where you want to have your first show?
Gosh, I mean, there's so many great clubs. Like you could be anywhere, but I would love to be at the Commodore in Vancouver. But I have no idea. Like, honestly, it is so nuts. I do not know what that it holds. Like, I couldn't even imagine which venue would be the venue that we go to, because I don't know what it's going to look like, because I can't imagine it being hot and sweaty and smashed together like they used to be. Like, I just can't see that now, right? Like, I just don't know. So what is that going to look like,
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Well, Trevor, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Certainly looking forward to the new music. I think that's going to be amazing, and certainly absolutely looking forward to the time that you guys are going to be live again, and we can see you in person. And
yes,
great.
Yes.
Thanks so much, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.